I'm just going to borrow you for, I don't know, what have I got? What have you left me? Half an hour?
Half an hour, yeah.
Half an hour? Right, try and squeeze it into half an hour. The difficult bit is there's so much that's happened, and it's like trying to choose what to leave out, because there's been some pretty awesome stuff. So it's trying to squeeze in half an hour, kind of how I went from... Questions afterwards? Yeah, going from just old life of being a web designer, car accident, 12 months of rehabilitation, and getting active again, struggling to run 1 mile, to then running across entire countries, deserts, jungles, and in this instance, a 100-mile frozen lake in Outer Mongolia, as you do. And this is day one of with an events company, Rat Race, of creating the Mongol 100. So this, as far as I was aware, had never been tried. This lake's about 100 miles long, 20 odd miles wide, and we wanted to see, I was one of their test pilots, a guinea pig, can we run across this? We tried to do it in 3 days, and this is about a few miles into day one, and despite the blue skies and sunshine, this is about minus 40 degrees. We're on day one, Mongol 100, wrecking, only about 5-6 miles in. Can't mass down very long, because this takes about 30 seconds and pops it up. There's the rest of the crew, support, G-Law at the back. Here's my bottle of water. I couldn't keep my water in my bag because the throw is solid, so my water's in the van. So I can only have a drink when the van stops. So ironically, we stood on running across a lake that makes up 0.4% of all the fresh water in the world, and I haven't got a drink. Yes, and those itty bitty mountains are about twice the height of Ben Nevis, like 3,000 metre summits all the way around. So this was, as it was, a pretty awesome adventure, but I was able to do stuff like this and say yes to this because I started a few years earlier. This is the Sahara, the sort of more better known, the Marathon des Sables, which was dubbed as the toughest foot race on earth. It's about 156 miles, or it was the week I did it, across the Sahara, all self-sufficient, back-to-back marathon. They say 6 back-to-back marathons. It was approximately first 3 days a marathon, and then the 4th day they throw in a cheeky double. So we did like 57 miles on the 4th day, and then a final full marathon on the final day. And getting to the start line of something like this is where all the hard work's been done. By the time I was there, I was excited. I was ready because I'd been building up to running like 80 miles a week as a typical, and every weekend back-to-back marathons, and it became just conditioned that was just normal day. Or nipping out to do a marathon while the missus and kids are watching X Factor finals. I'm popping out to do 20 miles, back at midnight, up again at 8 to do another sort of 30 or something. So, but not long before this, a few years before this, I was struggling to run 1 mile. After I'd just been graphic design, web designer, just always relatively fit, in and out of gyms and a bit of boxing and stuff like that. But a stark kind of kick up the arse for me, literally in many ways, was on a random frosty morning, a bit foggy, live in Thorney, heading over to work at Lynchwood, and traffic drew to a halt. And as I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw this big Land Rover Defender and its bull bars sliding towards the back of my car, ploughed into me, pushed me through the next 2 cars. And it was almost a fateful thing that I would have usually been in a little Peugeot 306, but that was being repaired, and I'd borrowed a Suzuki Vitara with a big spare tyre on the back, which conveniently took the brunt of the bull bars, which bent back into his engine. So it's quite a whack. And yeah, fortunately, everyone walked away relatively unscathed. I suffered some damage around my lower spine, a lot of tissue damage, which took a lot of sort of rehab, trying everything basically, acupuncture, cortisone injections, the MRIs, bouncing around one physio to the next because you haven't fixed me, I'm going to try this person. About 12 months of sort of physio just to get, I was walking, but it was constant pain. And then the main sort of best thing to do was to stay active, because as we sit still like we all do. Typically, we're all stiff first thing in the morning. Everything hurts, and it's like that when even more so when you've got scar tissue there. So, but we normally we spend most of our time laying down. We're laying down, then we get up, sit down for breakfast, sit down in the car to drive to work, to sit down all day, to then sit down to drive home, to sit down and eat dinner, and then sit down and watch telly because you're knackered from all that sitting down. So not a lot of moving. So I just tried to get back into running as I did as a teenager. And with the various knock-on effect of the pain up here, I'd referred pain in my knees. It took several, 2 or 3 months before I could run past a mile without my knee buckling, but persevered. And as you get to that point, you get to a mile. Right, I'll do 2 now, 3, and obviously the natural progression. Did a local half marathon. Perkins won here, and then a few obstacle races, and that's all a lot of fun. And you see the Spartan and the Tough Mudder and Tough Muddy. So I'm just going to sign up for one later. Yeah, and you get all these like guys with the tops off going, this is the toughest race. No, this is the toughest race. So I was curious as to what is the toughest race, which is when I stumbled across the Marathon des Sables, dubbed as the toughest foot race on earth, and went, right, I'm signing up for that. I'd only at this point run a half marathon, never mind a whole one or 6 of them back to back. But that accident was a bit of a kick to say, well, that could have been worse. I might not have walked away. So I went, I'm doing this, signed up, and getting tickets for this or getting onto it is like getting Glastonbury tickets. So within 2 minutes, 1,331 places had sold, and from people from all over the world. And I was like tapping away. I went, yes, I got a place. And I went, oh shit, I got a place. Oh. And from that moment, that was literally a life-changing moment. And I had to then go from this mediocre half marathon runner to being able to run back-to-back marathons, and it become a sort of normal thing just to go, yep, I'm just running to the coast, and then I'm running there. So, 10 months. From when I signed up for that, I had myself 10 months. And which was a little bit other people that I met along the way, or sort of you meet people on these training events and stuff, said, I've been training for 3 years towards this. It's like, right, okay, yeah. So I took it very seriously, and I kind of cut out drink. I really didn't want to fail on this because it's dubbed as one of the toughest ones because it's the self-sufficient one. So that was my pack. So from day one, you've got all your food for the whole 6 days is in your pack. Your first aid, your sleeping bag, your sleeping mat, and anything else you need to take is all in your pack from day one. And even your anti-venom pump in case scorpion bites and things like that, which makes it all exciting. This is my little, that's one of my day's food rations. Go right 2,500 calories. But then you quickly burn through that because you're burning 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. So you're on a deficit all the time. So just running on bare minimum. So water's the one thing you'd get checkpoints where they'd give you, and you'd start you off with a bottle of water, and then every 7 to 9 miles there'd be a checkpoint. There's another 1.5 litre bottle, and so you kind of had to time it right and get to turn up empty. So I'd normally get 1.5 litre, fill up my bottles, pour a bit over my head, drink a bit, and then leave an empty bottle behind. Try and get it just right. And you always had to take salt tablets and things like that to ensure you didn't lose it. Yeah, so training obviously don't get that around April time, not that toasty around here. So, but surprisingly, it's like went just 5 days, 5 1-hour sessions running in a heat chamber. So on a treadmill in a little room, they crank it up to 50 degrees, check your temperature for every 15 minutes that you're not going to pop, and run for an hour, set pace. And surprisingly, that's enough to get you. It's like when you go on holiday and you first get off the plane and the heat hits you, you're like, whoa, and then by the end of the week or fortnight, you're like, don't even notice that it's hot, really. You kind of get used to it, don't you? So but that's all it was. Surprising, just 5 1-hour sessions. Yeah, and include some 900-metre summits along the way. I think this was on the long day, which was 57 miles, and it hit 53 degrees that day. This was our living accommodation. So 8 of you in a well, they say tent, but it's blanket on the floor, blanket on sticks, and that's where you live. And it's a real leveler when you just 8 dudes in a tent or whoever's in there, and it doesn't even matter what your background is, all your millions, or if you got your Lamborghinis or whatever you do, famous is you just 8 dudes in a tent, half of them snoring, you're swapping peanuts for Skittles.
Good soft lines and tan lines on that one.
Yes, it's good, yeah. But yeah, pretty fresh. That's why they're open-sided tents. So, but absolutely incredible. And the cherry on the top for me was in one of my tent mates was this old dude you might recognise. So it's Ranulph Fiennes. So, and this, funnily enough, we had the most popular tent with all the Brits visiting, coming over to meet and have the photos with him. And it weren't until on the way home, because we're just, like I say, it doesn't matter who you are outside, even though we had a BBC film crew following him. And and he's just there, and that's there because he snores like a bloody lawnmower on gravel. But 5 out of our 8 tent mates, the 8 of us in our tent, 5 of them were snoring. It was like the frog chorus. It was horrible. And you really need some sleep when you've got to run marathons back to back. And so this was at the end, and I just went, Bran, you haven't even had a photo yet, because everyone else is getting photos all week long. And I went, do you want to have a photo so you can show your mates? And he's like, oh yes. And he goes like that, and he goes, and I've even got the trademark fingers hanging over your shoulder. So for those that don't know, he chopped his own frostbitten fingers off after a while when they were no use to him. So these, fortunately, not my feet. But with Ran, I was just asking him about, he at 65 finally summited Everest, the oldest Brit, and that was his 3rd attempt over a period of about 10 years. And just asking him, how do you get on with that? 65. How do you find and how did you complete that? And the classic line, he said, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that is kind of it with these things. You just take the hits, you get your toes and feet mashed and whatever comes along, but you just keep moving forward, whether it hurts or not. And not on this. No, not on this one. It's very, very lenient. I just went to kind of, first aim was do it. And like I say, following that car accident, I wanted to go, right, if I have another car accident next year, next month, whatever, you never know what's around the corner. I want to at least have done something awesome to show my kids and say I did that whilst I could. And initially it started off for me, and then it grew bigger than me, which Joe touched on a couple of weeks ago about finding your why in your business. Why are you doing this? And you said the 8 whys and things like that. This, aside from it was initially just for me to do some things just in case, then you're doing something this big, got to fundraise for a worthy cause. And a lot of you might know of Anna's Hope, but they're a local charity. Sadly, Anna didn't make her 4th birthday due to a brain tumour, but her mum and dad, Rob and Carol, founded Anna's Hope to help other children get better treatment and bring it all into one place rather than having to go to different parts of the country for different treatments. And I started fundraising for them because nobody gets paid and every penny goes somewhere. They can even pinpoint and say, right, for every £31 pays for a therapist for this child to learn to walk and talk again if they've made it. So that gave real extra purpose and drive. As soon as I did that and went, right, fundraising, the money started coming in, the messages of support, and this was suddenly way bigger than me, and made it impossible for me to quietly back out when it got difficult. Oh, it's cold, it's horrible, my legs hurt, because I wasn't doing it for me, I was doing it for everyone else. And still going strong, and it was nice to know the difference that makes when you can count the £31 worth of treatment that does that. So that's about getting your why and getting a purpose and being accountable. Really gives you strength to keep pushing, because it's bloody horrible at 4 o'clock in the morning running a marathon in the middle of winter just as a training run before you go to work. So I did finish that, and it went really well, better than expected. Main goal was to complete it, and then if I completed it, if I finished in top 50%, cool. But I ended up kind of just outside the top 10% of all runners. So all that training I'd put in paid off. What happens when you get back from the Sahara and you've got back and you just completed the toughest foot race on earth? 2 things people ask you: have you recovered? What are you doing next? Or how are you going to beat that? So, but the thing is, I'd gone from this half marathon runner, and at that point that was my level. That was right, I can do half marathon, I can do this little tough mudder. And then by the time I'd got up to that, I'd done this 6-day multi-stage ultra marathon, and that's your new normal. So suddenly you're looking at a whole different bunch of things you can do. So when the rat race team said, we've got an idea, we've found this giant lake in Outer Mongolia, it freezes over for half the year, we want to send a few of you to see if we can run across it, because it's never been done before. I'm like, yes, let's do that. I've gone to one of the hottest places in the world. This 100 degrees cooler, Lake Kovsgol, which is so big, it's about 22 miles wide, as I say, nearly 100 miles long. The lake is about 260 meters deep. And the really awesome thing is you can be on there, and these mountains, even though they're there, they're like 15, 20 miles away. And you're on there and you just hear the ice expanding and contracting. And it's like these tectonic plates almost. And it's like thunder or cannons going off in the background. It's so awesome. And as it expands, sometimes all comes up, sometimes retracts. And you've got a little sneaky trench there into the 260 meters of black water below, which you don't want to slip into. But the Mongolians use this as a motorway when it freezes over. So it saves them a 2-day drive through the mountains. They get a 6 or 7 hour drive straight across. So they love it. So it's about typically about a metre, 3 to 4 foot thick. And as you know, obviously ice floats. But it's very daunting when you're just in this little minibus thing. And the ice just varies. Some of it just looks like glass. And then some of it looks like ripple. It actually looks like water. As they're driving you across to our start point, you're like, that's definitely not ice. And he's like, no, and then you just carry on. It's incredible. So before we got started, we started off indoors in these cabins, and just as an idea, obviously you go home to get your pizza and chips or whatever out of the freezer. That's normally about minus 18 in a freezer. So at night it was minus 50. We're in the depths of winter, so by mid-afternoon it warmed up to a cozy minus 30 usually. And what's a clever little thing, once you get, I believe, you get below minus 40, you can have this awesome little trick with a cup of boiling water. Yeah, we did that a few times. That was great. It's fascinating. So aside from the main challenge, you get loads of really awesome experiences within the experience. So the guys, the Mongolians, you could camp on the ice, but they played it safe and camp on the side. So the Mongolian guys would go out, hunt and forage for our meals, chop down some little trees and make a campfire, and we stayed in these gers. The first night they said it definitely wasn't warm enough, even though I got a little wood burner inside. We're in there without thick clothes on, our like super thick and the warmest sleeping bags we could possibly get, and the wood burner going, and we've still got frost on our faces. It's still like minus 20 inside trying to sleep like that. But outside, we had a night round there, and one of my best sort of life experiences was in this. We're around the campfire, all the Mongolians, and we're passing around this Mongolian vodka. They're doing their little sing-song, and they're like doing their local songs. We're eating wild boar and reindeer that they've gone and hunted in the hills, and having that. And in the tree line around us, there's a pack of wolves howling, just waiting for a snack. But it's so cool, just going, this is real. This is like a giant lake. It's minus 50. And it was I was sat but to the fire to get close enough that my face is burning hot, but my back of my ears are freezing cold, and you had to just keep turning to warm your face up. So, great thing about this is I had an amazing videographer, and so we ran across, did that 3 days, first one across, and we got this awesome little footage, just all squished into 1 minute. It went a bit like this. That's my favourite. The Back to the Future bit is love that. So that's now an event. So we did the first one, and that's an event that they've run it once, and they took a group out to, and they can run, bike with little spikes on the wheels, or skate the distance. And we had the tough deal because we had the depths of winter, and afterwards they went, yeah, that's a bit too cold. We'll do it later in the year. And we did it over 3 days, and then went, yeah, that was a bit hard. Let's do it over 4 days. So we got the tough stint, but that's what we were there for. And then from that, among many, it's hard, like I say, hard to pick all the different things. But then from there, it's like I started thinking, well, what can I do with all this now? I've done a desert, done the hottest, and then one of the coldest places, and went, well, jungle. So just try to I've learned that I can run a bloody long way and keep going. So where can we go and do this? So this was another rat race event, and they kept going, right, you did all right on that, you didn't die. Let's come and try the jungle. So, and this is in Panama and in the jungle where everything, even the trees, want to hurt you. We're kayaking, did Panama Canal first, then we went to the other end of Panama to do a full coast to coast. So it was 200 kilometres-ish, and again it was a recce, and we were doing uncharted territory where the first 2 days were kind of 28, 29 miles running up roads, slowly uphill to 2,000 metres up the side of this old volcano, and then went in for what was going to be a 3-day hike through the jungle. So by the end of the 5th day in the jungle, we were a bit peckish and down to literally last fruit pastels that we're sharing around to get our way out. Very real. And this point, we kayaked across these croc waters, and it's all right when it's deep, but not so good when you get into close to the edge and it's only 2 or 3 foot and you're in the death zone. So literally, I was trying to get out to go into the hike section, and I was there, and you can see the bottom. And you're like, there's crocs and stuff there. And as I was waiting my turn, just stationary, there's one kayak in front of me, and then just heard this almighty slap. And it was about where that table is. And the other guys had seen it, and the croc tail just slapped down and fortunately swam that way. And it was like, going, yeah. So this was quite a whole other awesome adventure. Real camping, taking our machetes, hacking a path through, and then clearing each night to put our hammocks up. And one time I went to put my hammock up, and there's this big 1-foot-long stick insect there. One of the guys saw a big red snake go under my hammock. And then as you bed down, you have to turn your head torch off so all the bugs don't follow you into your hammock. So I just stopped, and you got wet feet because you're going through rivers constantly. Put my trek poles in, stuck my machete in the ground, put my boots on my poles so things don't crawl in them. And then head torch off, just went a step to get up, crawl under into my hammock. And as I stepped backwards, felt something bite the back of my foot. I was like, right, okay, let's just get in. I'll have a look at it when we turn my head torch because it's just pitch black. And as I was getting in, I thought, I know what you did, you dickhead. I stood backwards and slid my heel down my machete. I just went, and so that wasn't good. So as I turned my head torch on, there's blood, and I've got a damp, like, trench foot basically, and then trying to dry this off with alcohol and then patch it, and can't stick a plaster to it because you got this soggy foot. And that was on the first night of five days hiking through this stuff, and that doesn't help. So yeah, that was a schoolboy error for sure. Learned that one, but nonetheless, it was still incredible. Really tough. The total ascent over this crossing, stupidly steep hills and mountains, total ascent was almost bang on 29,000 feet. So the height of Everest from sea level, up and down. So a lot of hills for a guy from Peterborough. Yeah, but just incredible. And the good thing about what I found doing these is the people you meet, which on this bit were few and far between, but in these hills, I think over the 5 days in the jungle, we come across 3 lots of people. And they just live in little huts on the mountainsides. But they're so, like, there was a young family, they let us sleep on their porch, which was a nice break from the hammock. Although I had to put a netting on my head, cover up, and there were like inch-long bullet ants, fire ants, and a huntsman all around me at the same time while I was I'm just going to have a nap, and a pig foraging around by my feet. But these family, they're so content, and they're not cluttered with all the gubbins we have. Or what's the latest news story? What phone have I got? And have I got broadband? They've just got chickens, and a donkey and go out and get some bananas and stuff like that. And then they turn on a little like walkie-talkie radio to listen to the guy the other side of the mountain to tell them what's the latest thing happening in the nearest town a few mountains down. But they're just beaming smiles, wading around, no shoes, mud all over the feet. Their toilet is just a hole in the ground, and they're happier than most of the people in the Western world. And the hole in the ground, I've got to go back to one of the best bits. There's always a good poo story. Outer Mongolia, bear in mind, -50 up to -30. They have the hole in the ground. So the toilets there are a hole in the ground. Sometimes you have the luxury of a wooden hut over the top of it. And the hole's like probably about 6 foot deep. And what grows in -50 is what we fondly named stalagmites. So they're all landing in the same spot. And there's just up to 4 foot, some of them. It's unreal. And then one of the guys told us that it gave us an amazing story of when gone out, and now and again when they get too big, you've got to knock them down. And this guy had gone out to his, and this is when they're living out there, gone out with his shotgun. Right, love that. Frozen stalagmite, and just went, poof, shot it, exploded everywhere. Sorted, job done. Went to go back in his hut, nice and warm. Suddenly, he's got freckles, and they're nice, warm, smelly freckles. I just walked in, this stench just filled the place. Like, amazing. So, yeah, stalagmites are quite something. You get some amazing experiences. But meeting the people that live such humble lives and are probably happier than most of us in sort of our world. So, again, a 1-minute version of this is awesome. That was Panama. So a great way to, it's good because it's all those years ago, car accident, start running, try and run a long way. Never expected, anticipated any of this. Had no plan, no expectations, just went, I want to do this for me. But kept saying yes and yes and yes to stuff. And it's just led in all sorts of places like these opportunities. The fundraising, the somehow being able to inspire. You got old schoolmates going, oh, we were the same year at school. If you can do that, I can do a bloody park run. And it's nice. It's been the most rewarding thing to sort of share these experiences and somehow inspire someone or another, and being invited to talk at schools, and ended up within about my 4th talk, I was talking at Buckingham Palace. And it's going, okay, cool, yeah. And on the way, got to take my mum as well, because it's 2 days after her birthday. And it was in the gardens for the Duke of Edinburgh Gold Awards. And there's my brother and sister going, how are we going to beat that? Get her a garden ornament. She'll be happy with that. But so then I got to take my mum to Buckingham Palace, and she's there drinking a cup of tea with Alan Titchmarsh and Gabby Roslin, and I'm just sneaking a selfie with Dave Mitchell and all these like household names, and this guy. And it's just led to so many amazing experiences. And it's that kind of finding your why and a purpose. And I'm like, well, this beats building websites for sure. Yeah, and I'll just say, whatever level, wherever you are, whatever level you're at, not necessarily, you don't have to run across entire countries, but just set that goal that you're half thinking about, whether it's just your part or not even running related, but that ridiculous goal, and commit to it. Tell people you're doing it, make yourself accountable, take those long and accept that slow little steps, 1 foot in front of the other, and it leads to amazing things. Thank you.
Questions, folks? What's next?
What's next?